Mercedes were just hit by an FIA crackdown that was supposed to slow them down immediately. Instead, they arrived in Canada and completely destroyed the field. George Russell on pole. Kimi Antonelli right beside him. A full Mercedes 1-2. And the gap to the first non-Mercedes car was more than 0.3 of a second. In modern Formula One, that is enormous. But here is the part that shocked the paddock. Mercedes did not look weaker after the FIA intervention. They looked terrifying. Because hidden underneath the car was a radical new upgrade package nobody outside the team fully understood before Friday. A lighter gearbox. Aggressive aerodynamic changes. Reduced chassis weight. A completely refined energy deployment system. And the moment the cars hit the track in Montreal, rival engineers realized something was very wrong. The Mercedes was not just fast on the straights. It was stable everywhere. Through braking zones. Over curbs. Out of slow corners. Russell and Antonelli were attacking the walls with a level of confidence the other teams simply did not have. And that changes everything. Because if Mercedes can dominate immediately after losing a suspected advantage, then maybe the FIA never stopped the real source of their speed in the first place. And what Mercedes secretly unlocked in Canada could completely change the championship fight from this moment forward. The first signs appeared before qualifying even started. And most people watching probably missed them completely. Because on sprint weekends, Formula One teams only get one practice session before competitive laps begin. 1 hour. That is it. No room for mistakes. No time to hide weaknesses. If a team arrives unprepared, the stopwatch exposes them instantly. And Mercedes looked ready from the very first lap. Kimi Antonelli went fastest in practice. George Russell was right behind him. Then the timing screens showed a number that immediately made rival engineers nervous. The gap. At one stage of the session, Mercedes was more than 0.7 clear of the next fastest car. In modern Formula One, that kind of advantage feels almost impossible. The grid is usually separated by tiny margins. Hundredths of a second. Sometimes less. 0.7 is domination. And this is where the confusion inside the paddock started growing very quickly. Because only days earlier, people believed the FIA crackdown would hurt Mercedes badly. The expectation was simple. Remove the suspected advantage, and the performance disappears. But Canada instantly destroyed that theory. And the strangest part was not just the speed. It was how comfortable the Mercedes looked. Think about the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve for a second. This track punishes unstable cars brutally. Drivers attack massive braking zones, jump over aggressive curbs, and launch out of slow corners directly into long straights surrounded by walls. A nervous rear end here feels terrifying. One small slide can send the car straight into the barrier. But Russell and Antonelli looked completely calm. The Mercedes barely moved under braking. The rear stayed planted through direction changes. And out of slow corners, the car looked unbelievably clean on traction. That matters because confidence creates lap time in Formula One. If a driver trusts the car, everything changes automatically. They brake later. Attack curbs harder. Commit earlier to corner entry. And suddenly a fast car becomes untouchable. That is exactly what happened in Montreal. But here is the detail that changed everything behind the scenes. Mercedes did not arrive in Canada with a normal update package. According to the report, this was their first major upgrade package of the season. Not a small tweak. Not a minor floor adjustment. A complete step forward in multiple areas of the car at the same time. The biggest change was a redesigned gearbox. Smaller. Lighter. More compact internally. Now, that may not sound dramatic at first. But in Formula One, packaging changes can completely transform how a car behaves. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack while running. If someone suddenly removes weight and redistributes the balance perfectly, every movement becomes smoother. Turning feels easier. Stopping feels easier. Accelerating feels easier. That is essentially what Mercedes achieved at the rear of the car. And Canada is the perfect circuit to expose those gains immediately. Because every heavy braking zone rewards stability. Every traction zone rewards efficiency. Every curb rewards confidence. The Mercedes suddenly had all three. But here is where things become genuinely worrying for the rest of the grid. Mercedes did not stop with mechanical upgrades. They also changed the airflow around the car itself. The report specifically mentions aerodynamic improvements around the side pods and floor area to improve airflow toward the diffuser. That sounds technical, but the effect is simple. More stable airflow means a calmer rear end. And a calmer rear end allows drivers to push harder without fear. That is why Russell and Antonelli looked so aggressive near the walls all session long. They trusted the car completely. And then rival teams started realizing something uncomfortable. Mercedes did not look like a team surviving after an FIA crackdown. They looked like a team finally unlocking the full potential of the car. And once that idea started spreading through the paddock, the entire weekend suddenly felt much bigger than a normal sprint race. Then came sprint qualifying. And that was the moment the entire paddock realized Mercedes had become a serious problem again. Because practice sessions can be misleading. Teams hide pace all the time. Fuel loads change. Engine modes change. Drivers avoid risks. But qualifying strips everything away. One lap. Maximum attack. No excuses. And Mercedes still crushed everyone. George Russell took sprint pole with a 1 minute 12.965. Kimi Antonelli locked out the front row just 0.068 seconds behind him. That alone was impressive. But the truly shocking number came behind them. Lando Norris, the fastest non-Mercedes driver, was more than 0.3 slower. Ferrari was over 0.4 behind. Max Verstappen could only manage 7th place. In modern Formula One, those gaps are massive. And suddenly the entire conversation around the FIA crackdown started collapsing. Because if Mercedes had supposedly lost a major advantage, why did they now look even more dominant? That question spread through the garages immediately. And this is where the story becomes much bigger than one engine trick. Most dominant Formula One teams do not rely on one magical innovation. They win because multiple systems start working together perfectly at the same time. That is exactly what Mercedes looked like in Canada. The new gearbox improved efficiency. The lighter chassis improved direction changes. The updated floor stabilized the rear. The refined MGUK deployment improved acceleration out of corners. Individually, each gain sounds small. Together, they created a car that looked complete. And complete is one of the most dangerous words in Formula One. Because an incomplete fast car usually collapses under pressure somewhere. Tire wear, overheating, instability, poor traction, weak braking. But the Mercedes looked strong everywhere. Especially in the parts of the lap where confidence matters most. Watch how Russell attacked the final chicane during qualifying. The car stayed calm over the curbs, stable under braking, and clean on corner exit. That allows drivers to gain time almost subconsciously. And here is the important part. When drivers stop fighting the car, they start driving instinctively instead of defensively. That changes everything. Braking points move later naturally. Steering inputs become sharper. Drivers commit earlier to throttle. Tiny gains appear in every corner. And over an entire lap, those tiny gains become domination. But there was another layer to this performance that made the situation even more dangerous for the rest of the grid. The internal battle between Russell and Antonelli. Because Mercedes no longer has one driver carrying the team. They now have two drivers operating at an extremely high level simultaneously. Antonelli arrived in Canada leading the championship after 3 consecutive victories. Russell knew he needed an immediate response. And you could feel that pressure in qualifying. Every lap looked aggressive. Controlled, but aggressive. Like a driver trying to stop momentum before it turns into a championship collapse. Then Russell finally crossed the line and took pole. And his reaction said everything. Relief. Confidence. Maybe even warning. After the session, Russell admitted the upgraded car felt fantastic. That sentence matters more than most fans realize. Drivers are usually careful after one good session. They avoid making huge claims. Especially during a sprint weekend. But Russell sounded convinced this pace was real. And Antonelli's response made the situation even more fascinating. When the team told him Russell had beaten him by tiny margins, Antonelli simply answered, "Okay, understood. We'll see tomorrow." Short, calm, cold, no panic, no frustration, just confidence. And suddenly Mercedes had something every dominant team needs. Internal pressure without internal collapse. Because when two teammates both believe they can win the championship, they force each other to improve constantly. One pushes harder. The other responds immediately. Then both raise the level again. That is how dynasties begin in Formula One. But there was still one final question nobody fully understood yet. Why did this Mercedes package work this perfectly in Canada specifically, immediately after the FIA intervention? Because the answer to that may reveal something far bigger about where the entire championship is heading next. The answer starts with one word that almost nobody outside Formula One talks about enough. Efficiency. Not raw power. Not top speed alone. Efficiency. Because the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve rewards cars that can do 3 things perfectly at the same time. Brake aggressively. Rotate smoothly. Accelerate cleanly. And Mercedes suddenly mastered all 3. That is why Canada became the perfect track to expose what this new package was really capable of. Think about the layout for a second. Long straights connected by heavy braking zones. Slow corners leading directly into acceleration battles. Walls waiting for even the smallest mistake. This is not a circuit where drivers can hide instability. If the rear of the car feels nervous, the driver immediately loses confidence. Braking points move earlier. Corner exits become cautious. Lap time disappears everywhere. But the Mercedes looked completely different. Russell and Antonelli attacked the track like they trusted every inch of the car. And that level of trust usually means one thing inside Formula One. The platform of the car is finally working correctly. That sounds small, but it changes everything. Because for years, Mercedes kept chasing isolated solutions. One upgrade would help tire wear but hurt balance. Another would improve qualifying pace but damage race consistency. Canada looked different. For the first time in a long time, every system seemed connected properly. The lighter gearbox improved rear packaging. The aerodynamic changes stabilized airflow. The reduced chassis weight improved agility. And the updated MGUK deployment gave the drivers smoother acceleration onto Montreal's long straights. All those pieces started working together simultaneously. And suddenly the Mercedes stopped looking difficult to drive. That may actually be the biggest story of the entire weekend. Because fast Formula One cars are not always easy to control. Sometimes drivers extract incredible lap times while fighting instability constantly underneath them. But when a car becomes both fast and predictable, that is when domination begins. And this is where the rest of the paddock probably became nervous. Mercedes did not look like a team overperforming for one weekend. They looked organized, calm, prepared. Even Toto Wolff sounded completely relaxed after qualifying. According to the report, he said the Montreal package worked exactly as expected. Exactly as expected. That wording matters. Because it suggests Mercedes already understood the potential of this package before arriving in Canada. This was not luck. This was planned. And suddenly the FIA crackdown started looking almost irrelevant compared to the deeper transformation happening underneath the car itself. Because while rival teams focused on the legality debate, Mercedes kept improving the foundation of the entire package. That is a much bigger threat long term. And there is another reason this performance could become terrifying for the rest of the championship. This was only the first weekend with the full upgrade package. In Formula One, teams usually need several races to fully understand a major update. Engineers still have to optimize setup windows, ride heights, tire behavior, and balance characteristics. Which means Mercedes may still be learning how to unlock even more performance from this car. That possibility changes the championship picture completely. Because McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull are no longer fighting a team trying to recover. They may now be fighting a team entering the strongest development phase of its season. And the internal driver battle only makes that more dangerous. Antonelli arrived in Canada leading the championship. Russell answered immediately with pole position. That kind of rivalry pushes teams forward faster than almost anything else. One driver finds performance. The other responds. Then both improve again. It creates constant evolution inside the garage. And right now, Mercedes suddenly has momentum everywhere. On track. Inside the team. Inside the championship fight. Which brings us to the biggest question after Friday in Montreal. What happens if this was only the beginning? Because if Mercedes can dominate immediately after an FIA intervention that was supposed to slow them down, then the rest of Formula One may have completely misunderstood where their real advantage was coming from all along.